We come up with about twice as many mission plans.
I was just at the mall, and whew, that was a week time because all of my friends got some really good appetizers, and when you're just all sitting around the table together, I had to really stop myself a couple times to not mindlessly reach for some of their chips or pretzels.
What are you eating?
A pancake.
And what is Isidro eating? Space chocolate.
Space chocolate.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the astronaut candy? Is it yummy?
Can you tell which one's the space food and which one is our regular Easter meal here?
Hey guys, what are y'all making?
Astronaut burgers.
My family gets to eat this delicious grilled food, and I get to eat a kind of brisket. It's space brisket and baked barbecue beans, so we'll see how that ends up being.
See this? Oh, it's coming apart.
Oh no!
Oh, save the meat.
It's Monday, so we're done at Wednesday morning. We're really ready to be done. The weekend was hard.
I was not able to eat any of the food that was at the festival. There were some jalapeno corn dogs, and I'm like,
Sounds so good.
what is life right now? I can't even.
And we have curry chicken, green beans, and potatoes. The potatoes have been iffy, but these look better than some of the ones. Cream of mushroom soup.
Oh. A little bit of India, a little bit of Texas with this countryness. I'm so ready for this to be over.
Yeah, we're ready.
I need my social life back.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
I'm having milk today. Powdered milk. Ah!
We're nervous about the guests or the milk?
I'm more nervous about the milk, I'm not gonna lie. But something that I noticed while we've been eating this food is you have to have it really hot.
On the space station, we put it in a kind of it's almost like an easy bake oven.
Okay.
Where and that does make a really big difference.
So
I gotta admit, when I was making lunch this morning, I wasn't thinking this was gonna be on camera. Leftover rice, some turkey.
But it's home cooked.
It's definitely home cooked. Yeah, I was a big fan of the garlic paste.
Garlic paste.
That can fix anything.
Okay, question. Can you chew gum in space?
Yes.
Okay, because garlic, bad breath.
I wasn't trying to impress any of my crew members. We would use what we call food glue. Something, just make up something. Spray some olive oil in there to try to get everything to stick together a little bit. Or like I said, the garlic paste worked well for me. When you get a few people with rice in their eye, then after that, you figure something out. It's a lot easier in space because we don't have to load the syringe. Like if you were trying to measure out 250 milliliters of water or 100 milliliters of water, we literally just dial that number and then press the button for hot or cold water.
So talk to me about tacos in space. Tortillas, are they great to have up there? Yeah. Oh, sorry. It just floated on his plate.
Gosh, if we had salsa, we did have salsa sometimes. You could put that on there. The salsa will stick to the bread. You can use the salsa for other things to stick to the salsa.
I'm from San Antonio, and I love tacos. So I told everyone I would make a space taco. Yeah. So it's a little bit leaky, extra moist.
Happen in space.
Yeah.
It doesn't drip off the edges. It just makes a bubble.
Got to do the taco tilt because everybody knows. Good stuff.
That's awesome.
This was the Mexican scrambled eggs food lab. They know what they're doing. We have some scientists back there. So is there anything that you...
Ooh, we did it! Way better than the LBJ toast.
Yeah.
Favorite meal, I actually really liked a lot of the breakfast food. And the shrimp cocktail was in fact very good.
Ooh, shrimp cocktail, but the scrambled eggs in a taco? Ugh, nah, sorry. Done. And maybe if I had a machine to kind of heat everything up.
If I was sealed away from the outside world and I didn't have all those temptations, maybe.
Maybe if the food was floating around me, but I don't think I would otherwise.
We could do that.
Maybe if I were an astronaut.
So I was debating, this is the same debate I started with, nachos or a salad.
Let's get them both.
I'll get both. I should get
listen,
both.
at this point,
Yeah.
I think we need to treat ourselves.
Oh, for sure.
But I can tell you, I really want some coffee.
Yeah.
Some nice
regular coffee.
hot coffee,
Like a
not
latte.
powdered. I gotta get some coffee.
And a soda.
Yeah. This is not easy, y'all. I'm telling you.
We are going to the moon to stay. And this is how.
Hey, you're watching NASA TV, on the air and online every day, on this planet and beyond.
Tropical regions are among the hottest and most humid places on Earth, but also the coldest and driest. Yeah, you heard right. While temperatures on the surface can range from 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit all year round, they can dramatically drop as you go up in altitude. In fact, as you get closer to the stratosphere, they can be as low as minus 110 degrees Fahrenheit. This extremely cold region between the troposphere and the stratosphere is called the tropical tropopause layer.
In the tropics, it's very warm and moist down here at the surface. When you get up to the tropopause layer, it's very cold and dry.
So it turns out that the tropopause is actually coldest in the western Pacific.
Right above Guam is an ideal place because it is the coldest and the driest part of the tropics.
Everything is ready for the second phase of the field experiment. We are 13 degrees north of the equator in the Pacific, our new home away from home for the next several weeks. We are in Guam.
So the tropics are the part of the planet that gets the warmest from the heating from the sun because it gets the most sunlight on average.
Because the surface is so warm and there's so much water, you evaporate water, liquid water becomes a vapor, so you have this very hot, moist air down here at the surface. So this is air that's got a lot of energy. And just like a boiling pot of water, it can rise very high.
And it tends to pull other gases that come from the surface up with it. So this is the part of the world where most of the circulation getting up from the surface up into the upper part of the troposphere and into the stratosphere, this is where it occurs.
So here in the tropics, we see these thunderstorms boiling up to very, very high altitudes. And so we have a very high elevated tropopause here in the tropics.
As you get convective processes going, the air rises. As you know, if you take air and you expand it, it cools really fast.
And it turns out that, in fact, the warmest places in the world are in the tropics, but about 55,000 feet above us, about 16 kilometers, is one of the coldest places on Earth.
So what that does is, as it cools really fast, all that water vapor in the air going up gets squeezed out. It's like wringing a towel, and all the water starts to squeeze out. So you get cloud processes formed, squeezes out the water. The air that comes out the top tends to be dry.
You still get some water making it up to the tropical tropopause. And there the atmospheric motions transport air into the stratosphere. So air is transported into the stratosphere with a small amount of water that's left behind.
And this is the area that tends to be the controlling mechanism for how much water gets into the upper troposphere and then onto the stratosphere.
So if you want to understand the composition of the stratosphere, how much water there is, how much ozone-destroying substances or trace gases there are, you need to go to the tropics and study the region around the troposphere and the tropics.
So this is the spot to be. So this is the area where the ocean gets the warmest, the convection is the strongest, and then the air that comes out the top gets the coldest.
And we've known that for many decades, and for at least 20 years we've known we really need to go to the Western Pacific to study the extreme dehydration where the tropopause is coldest and where the most extreme dehydration to low water vapor concentrations occurs.
Now, Guam is the coldest and driest part of the tropics.
It's actually a warm region at the surface and a cold region at the tropopause. And Guam's right in the center of action. Plus it has the airfields and facilities we need to operate our high altitude aircraft.
It takes a lot of work to plan a remote deployment of this size.
Yeah, preparing for a mission where we're deployed, where we have to take the entire team and the aircraft and all of our equipment is really quite an effort.
Making sure we had a hangar available to us, making sure we had office space available, making sure that we had areas that we could set up our aircraft control trailer and our instrument control trailer.
It's also difficult because you're away from where you built your instruments, where you operate your aircraft. So if you have a problem, you have to ship everything here.
Because when you're this far from home, so to speak, you know, you got to have everything here. Not just the airplane and the people, but all your equipment, including spares.
Actually, all the work that's gone into this ATREX project has been one of the most difficult things I've ever done.
So when we operate out of Edwards Air Force Base, we operate from a fixed structure called the Global Hawk Operations Center. That's the main command and control center for the NASA Global Hawks.
Well, what's different from operating here in Guam versus operating back at Edwards is we have these mobile ground stations. So that's where we fly the airplane and operate our payloads from.
So the front room, the flight operations room, is replicated with a 40-foot trailer with all the communications equipment, all the computers, all the servers, everything. And then we have another trailer that replicates the 14 workstations that the payload operations room has, and that's in another trailer.
And we're basically providing the same functionality from Anderson Air Force Base in a forward location that we would have back at Edwards Air Force Base.
We can deploy anywhere in the world with these trailers as long as we have the appropriate setup.
Okay, that sounds like a good point. So we're ready for airplane.
For the ATREX campaign, the NASA Global Hawk is basing out of Anderson Air Force Base. And from Anderson Air Force Base, we'll be flying north all the way up to the Aleutians, east towards the Philippines, south down by Australia and New Zealand, and out to the east all the way to about Tahiti, the other side of Hawaii, basically. It's roughly about a 4,000 mile radius of range that the Global Hawk has here from here at Anderson Air Force Base.
We really have daily meetings. I know certainly the forecasters, the modeling group, and our pilots meet almost every day whenever we're getting ready for a flight. We are working every day on the aircraft, working with the scientists. They've got to pre-flight their instruments. After flight, they've got to post-flight their instruments. Some want to come off, some don't want to come off. So it's a constant ballet of activity around the airplane, in between flights until the day when we're ready to go. Everyone comes on. We'll have engine start at 5 o'clock, which means they've got to come in at 11 o'clock at night, work till 2 a.m., do their thing with the instruments. Then our crew comes in, buttons up the jet. It's rolling out at 4 o'clock. Engine start at 5, take off at 6. So it's an ensemble of people all doing really great work together to make this whole thing happen.
And we have a good power transition, good engine start.
And Trapper, can I get a takeoff report?
Yes, sir. Runway's clear. You're going for takeoff.
Roger that.
So the Global Hawk has great capability with tremendous range and endurance.
So many lessons learned from this campaign that will make our Global Hawk operation a much more globally deployable package.
And as we've demonstrated, we can do a lot of science from Dryden, California, or we can deploy, as we've illustrated here, to reach out. And I think we've shown now that we can really go almost anywhere in the world.
Because this is our first deployment away, really away from the mainland. This will be our first, it won't be our last, and we will be well suited to take our show on the road anywhere in the world from now on.
We're collecting data over the tropical Western Pacific, data that will improve our understanding of our atmosphere, weather, and climate. The Atrix mission will help us better comprehend the world we live in, to learn more about this planet we call home. Throughout many field campaigns, we've come a long way in expanding our knowledge and understanding of our atmosphere. But this hasn't been a one-person effort. Collaboration and close coordination within the Atrix team have made this endeavor possible.
For any field experiments you do, you have the questions that you're trying to answer, and then you figure out which data do you need to best answer the questions. Once you've done that, then you figure out who has the capability of making those measurements.
So basically what we've done is gathered the leading experts in theory, modeling of the atmosphere, and in making these very challenging measurements.
And that's the only way that you can really do science. You have to go to the right place and measure at the right time with the right people.
And part of the reason I really like these airborne science campaigns is they're sort of these grand endeavors where everybody comes out to the field, we're all working very hard with a common goal, and very thankful to have the opportunity to get these measurements. The other thing about these NASA campaigns is the data will then be shared with everybody. So it'll be used by people from all different countries.
The more people who use the data, the more of an impact our data have.
Because we're all basically working together, trying to understand how the atmosphere works.
The data we have gathered will be used to benefit humanity for many years to come.
when you make an observation, that's only the beginning of the story. It's like walking into a crime scene and taking a picture and collecting some evidence. Footwork begins after that, the real work of putting everything together to produce a full picture of what's happening in our atmosphere.
And ATREX is basically part of that puzzle. We're addressing a key uncertainty in how the models predict future climate change.
We have to actually figure out how all of these things work.
So the real underlying objective of ATREX is to understand climate change. Now, it's well known that climate change will have dramatic effects on people and ecosystems across the planet.
The atmosphere is always changing. Levels of gases are changing. Temperatures are changing. And you have to make very precise measurements in order to try to see those changes.
So when satellites measure, they measure basically looking through the atmosphere over a very long path length, multiple hundreds of kilometers they're averaging the data over. So if you have low water and somewhat higher water, what you're going to measure there is the average. When the airplane flies through these air masses, they're measuring over 10s and 20 meters at a time, so they're getting that entire variability.
So far, we've gathered these fine structure measurements of clouds and water vapor and the interaction between water vapor and clouds, and that's being used to better understand how the clouds form and how they affect the amount of water that's getting in the stratosphere. The other thing we've done is we've gotten a lot of measurements of these ozone-destroying substances in the tropical tropopause layer, which will ultimately get into the stratosphere, so we can better predict how much of these get into the stratosphere and again improve predictions of ozone destruction and the ozone layer recovery.
All of these processes are the things that we're after with ATREX.
15 seconds, one pass. SA 72 is off. Right. SA 72 switches 6.
The ATREX mission, we've seen some very, very interesting relationships between temperature, water, and particles that we're seeing in the atmosphere. This is really wonderful information and will be incredibly useful for how we can improve our modeling of the atmosphere.
But anytime you do climate science can be contentious in many parts of the world. So having data that is out there, free and open and defendable is important. If your data aren't available for everybody, it's always going to be in question.
The way we look at it from the science community is that the data is all shared. So it'll be shared amongst different institutions and different agencies and even different countries all around the world. Because we all have the common goal of trying to understand how the atmosphere is working and how the atmosphere is changing.
The scientists' understanding of the climate system and answering the key questions that can help resolve the uncertainties that decision makers have to make. It's key.
And so we'll still need measurements, and the measurements will improve, and our understanding will improve, but we'll need these measurements to further quantify how the atmosphere is changing.
The more we understand the processes, the better off society will be because of it. And some of those key processes, the only way you're going to answer them are through airborne campaigns like the one we're doing here.
Our future very much depends on the understanding of the world around us, on how this complex system we call Earth changes. That's why our mission is not only about doing research, but also about encouraging younger generations. They are the future of science and the key to continue understanding and improving the lives of all of us who call this planet home.
The students do not normally have an opportunity to see this.
To show them that there's actually stuff beyond just looking at what's in a book is very invaluable.
It gives them meaning and relevance to the work that they do in school.
I can't stress it enough just how important it is for the students to make that connection, because that's where they make their decision as to what they're going to do for the rest of their life.
It's fantastic to have real scientists, real pilots, real engineers and technicians coming in and sharing their experiences with the kids, because that brings science to life.
So we are bringing our science into their classrooms, as well as bringing the students here to see our science in action. And we're hoping that this will inspire some of the students to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, or math, and one day maybe even work for NASA.
And it's sometimes called the Dog Star.
In ancient Greek, Sirius means the scorcher, and both the Greeks and Romans believed the blazing bright star's proximity in the sky added to the sun's heat during that time of year, making it even more oppressive. So they called this hot time of year the dog days. Of course, today we know the only star close enough to affect our temperatures on Earth is the sun. And the heat we experience in July is the result of the northern hemisphere being tilted toward the sun. This yields longer days and more direct sunlight, and thus warmer weather. The situation is reversed in the southern hemisphere, where July is right in the middle of winter. Facing southward on July nights after sunset, you'll find a sky teeming with bright stars. Looking in that direction in the evening this time of year, you're facing the center of our galaxy, the Milky Way. And there are quite a number of bright stars in that part of the sky, particularly in the constellations Scorpius and Sagittarius. Now, if you find yourself under dark skies, you'll be able to fully enjoy the Milky Way core, densely packed with stars and clouds of dust and gas. It's dazzling this time of year, and it's visible toward the south as soon as it gets fully dark out. But even if you're under urban skies too bright to observe the Milky Way, the group of stars in Sagittarius known as the Teapot will help you pinpoint its location on the sky. The Teapot is a well-known asterism, or pattern of stars, and like Scorpius the Scorpion nearby, once you're familiar with it, it's hard not to see a teapot there in the sky. The galaxy's core lies just right of the stars in the teapot's spout. Over the course of the night, it appears to tilt, as though its spout is pouring out a cosmic cuppa. And under dark skies, the Milky Way appears as a plume of steam rising from the spout. So here's hoping you get a chance to enjoy the Milky Way in July, or at least that you find your way to the galaxy's core thanks to the teapot. Here are the phases of the moon for July. Stay up to date with all of NASA's missions to explore the solar system and beyond at nasa.gov. I'm Preston Dykes from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and that's what's up for this month.
Everybody, technology is always getting smaller. A computer used to take up an entire room, but now it fits in the palm of your hand. Well, spacecraft aren't all that different. They're traditionally very large and difficult to build, but we're working on ways to miniaturize them. We're going to talk all about that on this episode of Crazy Engineering. Hey everybody, we're here with Andy Klesch in one of JPL's smaller clean rooms. We're building CubeSats in here. Andy, what exactly is a CubeSat?
A CubeSat is really just a standard for a small spacecraft, and we're talking a very small spacecraft, 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters at the smallest on here. And yet they go up to about 30 by 20 by 10 centimeters. And we've launched hundreds into low Earth orbit for the last 10, 15 years.
So this really is in a big contrast to how we normally operate at JPL with our larger clean rooms and our larger spacecraft.
It is. We're trying things a little bit different over here. It's much more rapid development, trying things out with 3D printing, and building things up a lot quicker because these missions are a lot smaller.
If I were to build Voyager today, could I miniaturize it? Could I make it really small?
Absolutely not. Voyager has so many different capabilities, and these CubeSats are very, very limited, but they're very focused on what they do, so they can do one thing and do it very, very well.
You're the chief engineer of one of these CubeSat projects. Could you tell us a little bit about the one you're working on?
I work on Marco, or Mars Cube 1.
Can we take a look at the spacecraft?
Absolutely. It's right here.
This looks more like a computer to me than a spacecraft. Can you explain a little bit about how it works?
We have a propulsion system to actually steer us to Mars, a radio to talk back to Earth, and the computer and electronics so that we can actually operate.
So Marco's actually going to Mars?
That's right. We're launching with InSight.
So Marco will travel along with InSight all the way to Mars?
Actually, there are two identical Marco spacecraft, and they'll separate from InSight at Earth. Each spacecraft will then travel to Mars on its own over 6.5 months. Marco's single purpose is to relay data back from InSight during its entry, descent, and landing at Mars. We're really excited about this. It's the first interplanetary CubeSats that we'll have.
What do you see for the future of CubeSats?
Because these are low cost, we see them going to many cool places throughout the solar system. We also see them working together, what we call fractionated space, where the spacecraft is really broken up into all individual instruments, each with a focused task. And together, they're performing the entire mission.
We're hoping to see all kinds of new technology with CubeSats down the road. Andy, thank you so much for showing this to us. Hope you guys had a lot of fun learning about it. Check back soon for some more crazy engineering. If you guys like that, you can click over here to watch more crazy engineering, or click here to subscribe to the JPL YouTube channel. If you want to learn a lot more about what JPL is up to, click this link down here.
Considered how big breakthroughs in science, engineering, and medicine occur. The popular misconception of how a breakthrough happens is perhaps a eureka moment while working on a project, and in that instant, the next big thing is born. Although that may happen sometimes, the truth is that most big breakthroughs are not eureka moments at all, but actually take years of painstaking work, trial and error, and rigorous testing before the finished product is ever realized. Researchers in the world of engineering and science almost always move in small, incremental steps, slowly building the case for these new revelations until they are sure the research is ready to be shared with the world. Then, and only then, is when we in the general public hear about it. Although it may not be quite analogous, just think about the moon landing as an example of this phenomenon. Most of us are familiar with Neil Armstrong's famous words when he first stepped onto the moon.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
For those watching it, that moment may forever be viewed as perhaps the most tremendous scientific and engineering breakthrough in the history of the world. Clearly, that event was enormously important for many reasons, but that first step on the moon was actually the culmination of millions of smaller incremental steps from tens of thousands of others that allowed it to take place. This basic idea is true for all scientific study. Researchers and engineers generally take an idea and meticulously study it to make sure that all bases are covered before new technology reaches the general public. NASA's Environmentally Responsible Aviation Project team members are following that same philosophy as well. This team has been working for years to find ways to reduce aircraft drag, aircraft weight, fuel consumption, engine emissions, and aircraft noise. In order to achieve these lofty goals, the team did, in fact, take incremental steps to make sure each project was viable. Now, toward the end of the ERA project, the team is ready to take the lessons learned from the smaller tests and begin putting all the pieces together, preparing to show the world the next big thing in aeronautics. NASA X has been at the forefront of the ERA program since its inception. This 6-year endeavor has progressed from innovative ideas to multiple designs, wind tunnel tests, and actual flight hardware. And the aerospace industry has taken notice that these technologies are ready to dramatically improve aircraft efficiency. Part 1 of this episode of NASA X looks back at some of ERA's earlier tests to see how those early successes and failures paved the way to the larger, more advanced tests of today. And we will see what the future holds for many of the ideas and technologies that have been developed by some of NASA's best and brightest engineers and researchers. environmentally responsible aviation project was first implemented, it was clear the stated goals would be hard to reach. The team was tasked to reduce aircraft drag by 8%, reduce aircraft weight by 10%, reduce fuel consumption by 15%, reduce emissions by 75%, and reduce overall aircraft noise by 75%, all by the year 2025. Compounding the difficulty of making such dramatic improvements was the fact that many in the aviation industry believed that the modern tube and wing-shaped aircraft had reached its maximum ceiling on efficiency. When NASA first undertook this challenge, they realized they would have to bring an A-team of NASA engineers from numerous NASA field centers, along with highly skilled teams from industry and academia, in an effort to find these new efficiencies.
We've got new airframes, 8 different technologies that we've worked in Phase 2, a myriad of 60-something technologies we worked in Phase 1 and we looked at, and we will be delivering at the end of this year technologies that say we can meet all of those goals. So it is an unmitigated success, and every one of our partners in this is getting something out of it.
Some of the major areas of study for the team included looking at engine redesigns, airframe redesigns, materials testing, and even developing new aircraft that integrate the wings into the aircraft body to increase efficiency. This unique design is called the HWB, or Hybrid Wing Body Aircraft. The HWB began its life as a series of computer models and then was upgraded to sophisticated wind tunnel models. Once the team was satisfied the HWB concept showed significant promise, it was upgraded to a flying scale model aircraft. 122 times the hybrid wing body models flew over the dry lake bed in California, where so many previous X-planes had flown before. And with each flight, the engineering data helped validate this unique type of aircraft design. Researchers feel confident that the strides they have made in this aircraft design will pay huge dividends in the future. Just watching footage of early aircraft shows how far we've come in only 100 years. As an example, most early planes were made out of wood and canvas, but as planes became more powerful and efficient, materials began to change. Today, we're aware that most planes are made out of lightweight aluminum skins, but the industry is moving toward the use of composite materials now as well. In fact, the Boeing 787 was the first all-composite airplane ever produced, and it took its first commercial flight on October 6, 2011. Although this plane is state-of-the-art, NASA's ERA planners believe that they can improve the strength of composites while making them safer as well. The idea they're investigating is called Perseus, or Pultruded Rod Stitched Efficient Unitized Structure. Early testing began with small pieces called coupons. They were developed to a point where researchers believed they could be tested on a larger scale. NASA's team built larger test sections and eventually brought them to this lab for stress testing. With this test, designed to bring the article to failure mode, the team applied pressure until the piece snapped. The data was used to further validate Perseus, and now the team has decided to build and break a nearly full-scale piece of Perseus material.
NASA and Boeing have been working together for quite a few years developing lightweight structure for commercial transport aircraft. What we're seeing today is the final piece of a project called Damage Arresting Composites, where we're trying to develop a new structural concept that will be applicable to lightweight structures for commercial airplanes. And what you see here is a 30-foot-long test article that we'll be testing at the NASA Langley Research Center by applying the kinds of loading that it would feel if it were in a real airplane.
But with a piece this large, a major hurdle lay in front of them: how to get the piece from California to Virginia for testing. Traditional methods like trucking and train travel would not work due to bridges, overpasses, and some road weight restrictions. The solution was to fly it across country. But no ordinary aircraft would do. Ultimately, the team enlisted the service of NASA Johnson's Super Guppy aircraft for transport across country. This Cold War era aircraft was specially designed with a hinged front-loading system that could just barely accommodate NASA's cargo. It was not lost on team members that this old and slow beast of an aircraft was transporting a test article that will undoubtedly be used in many aircraft of the future. On a cold December night, the aircraft landed in Virginia for an early morning offload. Here is Dr. Faye Collier to explain what is next for this test.
Today we're here at Langley Field unloading the Perseus multi-bay Colts multi-bay box that will be tested in the Colts facility. So we've been working on Perseus for about 10 years now, partnered with the Air Force, partnered with Boeing, R&T. And we started off with small coupon testing to prove out the concept. We built a small box that we tested 3 years ago to prove that the concept could take pressure and would meet the design constraints. We went from there to assembling this piece of 30-foot structure that we're going to test in the Langley Combined Loads Test System down the street here. So a long effort that has gone into this with NASA and Boeing, culminating in the delivery of this 10,000-pound piece of aircraft structure. We'll stick it into the facility. We'll mount it. It'll be eventually pressurized to various pressure readings. The idea is to twist and turn the part to see if it'll sustain the design loads that would be needed if we were to build a real airplane out of this.
This facility will prove to be a valuable tool for researchers. These types of tests will help in investigating damage tolerance and any repair techniques that may be applicable. One of the key test points that will be addressed in this round of testing will see how Perseus handles routine damage that might be expected, such as a technician dropping a hammer. Researchers need to understand how this new material will react if minor damage occurs. To do this, a unique test rig has been designed by hand. Here is Andrew Lovejoy to explain.
So some of the things that could impact the plane are rocks or debris that's on the runway when it's taking off or landing. As I said, you could have mechanics that could hit it with a tool, or a vehicle driving by could hit it. And all those types of things can cause damage. And on the exterior, you're more likely to have a higher energy because a vehicle hitting it or something being thrown up by the tire is going to be a much higher velocity than, say, a tool drop. So barely visible impact, if you're doing walk-around inspection, it's a damage that you would barely be able to see. So if you're at that level, the aircraft has to be able to sustain the loads that it would normally see, even with that damage in place. So you have to be able to analyze and then test to make sure that you can hold those loads. So what you have to do is an impact test. So we're doing an impact test, and if you were going to impact at the top on something, you would just have a free-falling, you could have a free-falling weight that would come down and hit. And that's fairly straightforward because you have a mass and you have a height, so you can have a straightforward calculation of the energy. If you wanted to hit on the side, we have spring-loaded, but for the multi-bay box, one of the things we're doing is hitting on the keel, which is the bottom. So we have to have an impact that's going upwards. There's very limited space in Colts. You can have an air-driven projectile. You could have a spring-loaded, but those, to me, are less controllable. So instead came up with the roller coaster impactor. So it's really a controlled drop. It comes down the track, and then it'll go up, and when it hits, it's going in a vertical direction. So in order to impact on the keel, we needed the impact weight to go up, and we didn't have any device to be able to do that. So from scratch, we designed and built the roller coaster impactor. The second main part is the track itself. The track itself is to control it and make it go where we want it to go. When it was rolling down, gravity's keeping it on the track. When it starts to go vertical, it wants to flop. So there's actually two pieces of track that will encapsulate this right before impact to guarantee that we're getting that vertical impact on the bottom of the keel.
Numerous tests were performed in the Colts facility to check the box's ability to meet what engineers call the design limit load and the design ultimate load. In aerospace engineering, the term design limit load refers to the maximum load factor authorized in flight. It is extremely unlikely that an aircraft will ever reach this limit during its lifetime. The design ultimate load goes beyond that and is the amount of load applied which will make the component fail. In this case, the ultimate load factor is 1.5 times more than the limit load. With testing and data acquisition complete, researchers found the Perseus box performed beautifully under extremely stressful conditions. It actually performed above the expected design ultimate load factor, which means the box is even stronger than predicted. With that type of result, researchers feel there is an opportunity to lighten the box even more, potentially making future aircraft even more efficient. Although this stage of the testing is complete, the team has reams of data to look over and will continue working to make the aircraft of tomorrow stronger and more efficient than ever. The hinged wing design on aircraft has been around since the early 1900s. Currently, this design is state-of-the-art and almost magical in its operation, extending and retracting during takeoff and landing. But hinged flaps have drawbacks, such as high noise levels, and their design affects the flow over the wing, making them less efficient. NASA is currently working on improving specific aspects of wing design and has partnered with a small company out of Ann Arbor, Michigan called Flexus to combat these problems. Their innovative design has the potential to revolutionize flight by having the wings on aircraft act more like a bird's wing rather than the traditional flap system we have now. Here is Dr. Sridhar Kota, the inventor of the Flexus wing, to explain.
So with the current flaps, once they're tucked in, you don't want to move those flaps because the flow will separate. So the aerospace community has known for a long time that if you have a seamless wing that can be morphed in flight to maximize the performance, then you can get significant fuel efficiency. And actually, Wright brothers did that for roll control.
The idea to have aircraft wings morph is not a new idea. In fact, the Wright brothers' first designs used morphing wings to help with controlling flight. But as aircraft became heavier and began using stronger materials, aircraft designers were forced to stop using the morphing wing technique and use flaps and slats, which have been in use ever since. Designers have long known that reducing the use of flaps and going back to a morphing wing would be more efficient, but until now, no one was quite sure how to make it happen. While looking at this problem in the early 90s, Dr. Kota came up with an idea called compliant design that uses techniques that are borrowed more from nature than from traditional mechanical designs.
Everything we engineered, if you look around the objects around you, anything that is strong is also very rigid. And when you want mechanical functionality in the design, you put multiple parts, springs, cams, gears, and make intricate mechanism that works beautifully. Whereas designs in nature are different. They are strong, but they are compliant. They're flexible. So you can see the trees bending in heavy winds, so they bend rather than break. And you can see countless examples in nature where you get pretty intricate mechanical motion without conventional joints. And in fact, 80% of living creatures are invertebrates, and they do pretty well with the locomotion and other mechanical functionality without multiple joints and links. So the question is, how do we capture that where we want a monolithic structure that can do mechanical motions without joints? So the idea is that how do we get this compliance, the flexibility distributed throughout the structure, and how do you design structures like that? So I'll give you a simple example of how what I call the distributed compliance. And you can see this here. So here, this is can be a monolithic design, no joints. And when I apply force at these tabs, and you can see it move, so you can get large deformation. But the way it's designed is you have very small stress in the structure, which means every section of the material shares the functionality, shares the load, so the stresses are evenly distributed. That's how we have very small stress, very small strain. It works in a linear elastic strain region, so you get large deformation, and which means you can do this multiple times. You can do this millions of cycles and still not fail.
Although the exact technique is still a trade secret, the Flexus team's design uses a proprietary algorithm in a way that minimizes the force it takes to morph the wing to a prescribed shape. This technique also has inherent mechanical advantages in that it is very stiff to external loads. Simply put, the design is incredibly strong, but does not need huge motors to morph the wing. To test this concept further, NASA's ERA team decided to place a Flexus wing on board an aircraft to test in flight. The team removed the traditional flaps from a Gulfstream aircraft and replaced them with a Flexus wing for the initial testing. Tom Rigney of NASA Armstrong explains.
The reason it's important is because one of the largest contributors of noise for an aircraft, when it comes down to approach for landing or for takeoff, there's a lot of noise that's generated by the spaces and gaps from existing flaps that are on an aircraft. And so what this does is it reduces that noise by eliminating those gaps. And they have a smooth, continuous surface rather than having gaps. And it can reduce sound within up to 4 to 6 decibels, which is significant. This technology is really helping aviation, the whole aviation industry. It's something similar to what we had with winglets. So winglets came on aircraft and made them much lighter and more efficient, more effective. And this is similar to winglets. We're going to be able to take an airplane and have wings act more like a bird. Instead of having just these boards that come down and all locked in place, you're going to actually have morphing and shaping wings just like a bird would do. And that makes the aircraft more effective in terms of flying, in terms of efficiency, fuel savings, and it's going to save hundreds of millions of dollars for the public for flying. It's also going to make planes lighter weight, which allow for more luggage and other things to go on board. And it's more of a green type of technology, less carbon in the air for the world to have to deal with later. So this is going to be really helping out the environment as well as saving money. So it's really a great technology.
The first tests of this design were very successful and met all of the stringent stretch goals that engineers set out to meet. This design shows tremendous promise, and future testing should continue to further validate the time and effort that the ERA team put into this technology. NASA, in cooperation with industry partners, is truly transforming the concept of how we fly. 2025 is right around the corner, and before you know it, many of the concepts the ERA team has studied will undoubtedly be used to make flying safer for all of us.
Ready to showcase the Webb Space Telescope's first full-color images, back in touch with a spacecraft on an important mission to the moon, and our Artemis 1 moon rocket and spacecraft move a step closer to launch. A few of the stories to tell you about this week at NASA. The much-anticipated release of the James Webb Space Telescope's first full-color images and spectroscopic data is targeted for July 12th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time during a live broadcast from our Goddard Space Flight Center. That show will be available on NASA TV, the NASA app, the agency's website, and various social media platforms. As each .gov/Webb first images. These first images will demonstrate Webb at its full power, ready to begin its mission to unfold the infrared universe. After experiencing post-launch communications issues on July 4th, teams for our Cislunar Autonomous Positioning System Technology Operations and Navigation Experiment, or CAPSTONE mission, have re-established contact with the spacecraft. The team has determined that an improperly formatted command sent to the spacecraft's radio caused the issues. Data received from the spacecraft indicate that it is in good health and it operated safely on its own while it was
puanı var.